that can hopefully make your lives and days better. Again, I'm Christina. I would love to kick this over to Becca, but before I do, just want everybody to know that if you have to hop off for whatever reason, or if your colleagues are interested in this webinar and cannot attend, there will be a recording of this webinar available on our site webpage. Feel free to contact me. I'll put my contact information in the chat if you're unable to view or see that within about a week. With that, I'm happy to introduce Becca Hayslip, who is the marketing manager with Forsyte.
Hi, yes, and thank you for that introduction. And thank you all for attending today's webinar on strengthening cybersecurity in California K12. I'm Becca Hayslip, the marketing manager here at Forsyte and one of your main points of contacts. And we're always looking to provide more value to you and your organization as a CFIT partner. So if you need anything from us, please let us know. And I will drop my email in the chat. So again, please feel free to reach out. I will kick things off with our agenda, starting with introducing our speaker panel here today, and then I'll pass things off to my colleagues to cover the state of cybersecurity and 2025 security goals in California K12, Guardian 365 MXDR overview, a security technology framework, and a security spotlight with Simi Valley USD. We will then wrap things up with an open Q&A session and our closing remarks. I will be monitoring the chat throughout this webinar, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop them there, and we will address them at the end of our session. So now for the introductions. We have Stefanie Dunn, CFIT's point of contact and sales director here at Forsyte, Chris Irwin, the chief technology officer at Forsyte, Monte McCubbin, Forsyte's customer and director of IT at Simi Valley USD, and Fadi Habib, cloud strategic partner at Microsoft. And I will now hand it over to Stefanie Dunn to kick things off.
Thank you, Becca. Appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us today. We are very excited to be here. And as your CFIT's partner, which stands for SITE and Forsyte IT Solutions, we're looking forward to talking with you about our most passionate subject, which is cybersecurity in California, and particularly in California K12. So Forsyte is an esteemed Microsoft partner. We do work with many different technologies. Here today, we've got our Microsoft partners on the call, and we're thrilled to talk through and dig into a little bit more about what makes cybersecurity for education, and especially California K12, so unique and special today that deserves our undivided attention. So Forsyte is Microsoft MXDR verified partner. What that means is we work closely with Microsoft. We have been audited and vetted and given the stamp of approval of being a robust managed SOC and meeting all of the stringent requirements that comes along with from Microsoft. Just a few of our customers here. We're highlighting Monte today. We're very excited for Simi Valley to be here with us and just talk more about the experience that Monte and his team has gone through behind the scenes as they work to harden their cybersecurity operations at Simi Valley USD. CFIT's partner program benefits are extensive. They do surround a Guardian 365 Forsyte's managed security service, and they're really built for you. So they're built for the site community in mind. Guardian is a 24/7, 365 MDR service. It's really an extension of your team, and Monte can certainly answer any questions. I'm sure he wouldn't mind if you do have questions along the way, because it is an experience. It is supposed to be a partnership. What's unique about the CFIT's partner program is that we do have pre-negotiated pricing. That means that Christina and her team over at SITE have done all of the heavy lifting to get the pricing and contracting out of the way, so that that's just one less hurdle that you have in front of you as you go forward and address your cybersecurity concerns. We do offer many services behind Guardian, and we're happy to talk to you about that as well. Today, we're looking forward to digging into current state and technology goals for 2025 across California K12. We all know that the traditional infrastructure has shifted to a primarily cloud-first model. And so what does that mean? How are you going about and how are you keeping track of all the various identities that are getting access to your system, whether it be students, parents, faculty, staff, partners, vendors? What does that look like for you and how are you controlling that? Because it really isn't, just because we're not looking at it does not mean that it's not a threat. In fact, 90% of successful attacks start with an email. So, we're still there. And it's still something that we need to prioritize in the way of servicing your end users. So we're here to talk about that. If you do have questions, I know Becca said it, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them throughout the time together here today. Our goals are to show you what a proper zero trust architecture looks like. Things to keep in mind when you do institute your 24/7 human-powered MDR internally, or if you decide on a partner service, that's great. We're always happy to talk to you about that. And then just what are you doing from a go-forward point? How are you maintaining best practices? How often are you performing your threat assessments, end user phishing training, pen test? Are you using MFA? We know in K-12 that's a big subject, and sometimes it's a sore subject. So, how are you doing that? Are there ways that you have identified that you need some assistance? We're here to answer those today. And then, of course, use of the CFITS contract. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and Becca will put my email address as well into the comment thread. And Christina is the main point of contact over at Site. So welcome. So today we're primarily talking about Guardian 365 in that is our expertise in best practice security. So as we think through what is it going to look like to get you to best practice, to that zero trust security architecture, and how can we lean in and help as a partner? We look at the broad spectrum. So we're looking across threat intelligence, incident response, proactive threat hunting, all of your security configurations. What third-party security technology do you have in place today? Do you have Microsoft? Guardian works with or without Microsoft Sentinel. We certainly recommend Sentinel for best practice, and Fadi's here to talk more about a K-12 offer that he has worked on with Microsoft, which is extremely generous and exciting. So want to give him time for that. And just how are you bringing all of the security solutions that you have in place, be it third party, be it on the Microsoft Office 365 tenant or Google Workplace tenant? We don't want there to be a blocker here as far as getting you the security services that you need. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Irwin. Chris, if you'd like to take us through the technology stack and explain a little bit more behind the scenes.
Absolutely. So let me first start by just backing up real quick. We can use any technology stack out there. The reason Forsyte is settled on the Microsoft technology stack is for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it's availability and cost. It's the most cost-effective end-to-end security solution out there today. I would challenge anyone that denies that. You go look at the pricing and everything that the Microsoft security stack provides. When we're really trying to build a depth and defense and zero trust model, it's not about finding a single solution that's going to catch everything, because it just doesn't work that way, right? You can go look at any of the other MDR solutions out there, and that's what they are. They're managed detect and response. It's not looking across the entire stack at the other components from Defender for Identity on premise or CASB solutions, et cetera. So what we do with the Microsoft suite is we're able to bring all of those under one umbrella. They communicate with each other. Not only do we have some best in breed solutions in there, but we have a best of suite solution across the board. So when we get those inbound phishing emails, we're able to correlate that easily across the entire attack kill chain. What we've got pulled up here is the attack kill chain for the most common type of attack, or the most common attack vector. This is supported by the FBI data for the last 10 years. Business compromised email or phishing campaigns is still the number one way that folks get into systems. We're still very concerned and on the lookout for nation states, but the reality is that your end users are the gateway that most people are breaking in. So what this does is overlay the typical attack kill chain for business compromised email along with the solutions in the Microsoft suite. The vast majority of you guys already own this technology. This is all in A3 and A5. There are various components depending on which flavor you have, but we can provide protection across the entire board in a depth and defense and layered approach. So utilizing Defender for Office, Office 365, that's going to be your inbound email hygiene, safe links, safe attachments, those type of things. So the first opportunity to stop a business compromised email is when the email comes in, obviously. Microsoft has a bunch of hygiene and various solutions in place to filter that mail out as it comes in. In addition to that, they're doing a 0-day attachment, explosion, etc. in a detonation chamber. There's safe links. Those are very common technologies now that we see across the board, but we provide that up front as soon as it hits our environment. The very next thing that happens after you've received that email is it's going to hit an endpoint or a server. And that's where the Defender for Endpoint solution comes in place. It's another opportunity to stop potential attacks in their tracks and see where they're going. This is where we're going to see exploitation. We're going to see malware run here, command and control attacks, those type of things. The next component depends on where the identity is authenticating at. So Microsoft has both the cloud-based solution and Defender for the on-premise solution covered. If it's in the cloud, we would leverage Entra ID identity protection. Essentially, that's a cloud-based ML and AI solution that looks at all of the logins in Entra ID and provides in-depth details into what they're doing. Are they acting outside of normal patterns? Are they going in and connecting from a VPN that they've never connected from and accessing resources? We're able to pattern that information out. We're able to assign risk scores based on where they're connecting from, when they're connecting, et cetera, and take all of that into account. It's another opportunity to prevent an attack. Then we've got Defender for Identity. This actually overlays on your on-premise Active Directory. This is a component that a lot of folks tend to overlook. Active Directory is still a vital component for the vast majority of organizations, and the reality is it's 25 years old. It's been around for a long time. People have been attacking it for the last 25 years, some plus, and they're going to continue to do so. Microsoft's done a fairly good job of patching that and maintaining it, but it's still a giant target that we need to watch for. Defender for Identity provides a lot of the same features that we have in the Entra ID solution to your on-premise Active Directory. So now we're able to take all of that legacy on-premise data, we're able to aggregate it up through the solution. We're able to detect typical AD accounts or AD attacks, pass the hash, golden ticket, man in the middle, all of the typical stuff that you would see in an AD attack. In addition to that, though, what Microsoft done is layered in AI and ML, similar to what they do in Entra. So we're able to pattern out user access. If Monte typically logs into a particular machine at a certain amount, a certain time of the day, from the office, and all of a sudden at 3 a.m. he connects from a VPN in Bangladesh, we're going to see that. We're going to notify it that's out of the norm, and that'll get bubbled up and allow us to take action on it. So very, very important solution there. And then finally, Defender for Cloud. We have, and I say we as the collective whole, all of us have SaaS applications that aren't hosted on premise. I don't think I've run across any customer in the last 3 or 4 years that doesn't have some form of SaaS application. And so leveraging this stack, we're able to use Defender for Identity and Defender for Cloud apps to control the access to those applications and protect them as well. So we can gather all the SAML data, we can look at all the access data, and this even allows us to tie into third-party solutions and get security information out of them. If we want to monitor the AWS platform, Google, those type of things, we have the ability to connect in and do that. Using these solutions, we can provide end-to-end protection. We've got multiple points at which we can identify the breach, we can shut it down, and we can protect your environment. There is no solution out there that's a silver bullet that's going to fix everything. So you have to really build this depth and defense layered approach to give yourselves the best opportunity to stop any attack or malfeasance that may be going on. You'll go ahead and go to the next slide, Stefanie. So I mentioned Google earlier. I know we have education customers out there. We still see quite a bit of Google. Completely fine. You can absolutely protect your Google environment using the Microsoft stack. Actually, we have a bunch of customers doing that. We've built a reference architecture specifically around that, and we're able to enhance the security of your Google environment leveraging Microsoft technology. Nobody would have expected to say that even 5 years ago, but it is fairly technology agnostic now. We would leverage some of the native Google Workspace tools for email hygiene, as the Microsoft Defender solution doesn't work well in that scenario. We could reroute mail, but it doesn't make sense to do that. The upside is, though, the rest of it plugs right in. We can have Google authenticate against Entra ID, and then it unlocks all of the potential security controls in Entra ID that you didn't have using the Google directory. So now we can tie in conditional access, Defender for identity, and all of the other components that we spoke about and help protect you down the chain. So it's not just about protecting email. That's the entry point. We want to protect everything down the line. What this slide and the next slide will do, we'll just kind of detail out some of the configurations that we put in place in these individual tools. And I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I do want to point out we're doing a ton of base configuration across the entire stack to make sure that you're as protected as possible. We go through and do a gap analysis on the environment whenever we bring them in. We look at all the security tools that are available and then help you build that comprehensive depth of defense strategy, implement that solution so that we can protect you going forward. So these would be the specific Microsoft components. When you look forward, if you were on Google, we would definitely want to leverage some of these other components as well. You can fast forward,
Okay.
Stefanie, that's fine. I really just wanted to talk about the Entra ID stuff. That is a little bit different if you're gonna leverage Google. Absolutely not required, but my recommendation would be to use Entra ID as your IDP. There's a ton of security features available or that become available once you do that. Not just for Google, but any service that's authenticating to Entra. We'll be able to leverage conditional access policies, geofencing. We can tie that into device compliancy policies, self-service password reset. It provides you a ton of different security options across your entire environment, even for non-Microsoft solutions. And then finally, this just kind of digs in a little bit on the Google specific stuff, but these are features that we can absolutely provide from a Google perspective using the Microsoft solution set. We can tie in data loss prevention. We can do log ingestion into the SIEM. We're able to connect into Google security APIs using the Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. That provides the connectivity into Google. At that point, we're able to monitor it just like we are any other solution. That gets pulled into our SIEM. We can apply conditional access policies, et cetera, going forward. So we really can provide an end-to-end solution using the Microsoft tool set for your Google environments as well.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
what that does, is it brings you into that best of suite mentality instead of best of breed. So you've got the end-to-end technology stack behind it that's all working seamlessly together, and then you layer on top of that your security practice to control your security operations. And Fadi, if you are ready, we'd love for you to talk about this exciting Sentinel deal that you really did structure just for the site community here, and give a little bit of background.
Of course. Thank you, Stefanie. So as the quick intro, I covered the entire state of California, all the K12s and the 58 COEs in California. Been with Microsoft 3 years, and before this, 20 years as a technologist, financial industry for 10, then EdTech services after. When joining Microsoft, wanted to make sure we truly align, give the best to our customers, from the pricing to the product, etc. And the way it started is, a lot of customers came back, it's like, we are interested in getting a SIEM solution, we're interested in Sentinel, but the cost is too high. We worked, myself and the rest of the internal Microsoft team, specifically Ash Summer, to be able to align the pricing through our CAMS agreement with Site. We're able to get up to 50% off for your entire agreement period. So usually you do a 3-year agreement, so it will just be baked in as long as you sign up before end of June this fiscal year, then it gets extended there. We're working on getting that even extended beyond June, but at the moment we're just looking to see where does this land, how does this go on that. And we're very happy actually with also a quick background between us and Forsyte. Came along also a couple of years ago, and we hand select which partner to be working for the K12, because K12 is a little bit unique and special in California as well too. So, and we had great success with Forsyte, and as Stefanie was showing, different customer references as well too. So in summary, we're able to give the 50% off for K12 customers, CIOs in California. You can reach out directly to me, and we can work through that, or your reseller as well too.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Fadi. And just as a note, we'll be putting in the link to a webinar coming up. It's in a couple of weeks, and Microsoft and Forsyte will be on that webinar together. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about Sentinel and the ways that you can use it for data ingest, we'd love to have you there. So we'll send out this deck afterwards as well, and you can have the link to that in there. Thank you, Fadi. So all up, Guardian 24/7 managed security operations goes a little something like this. We have it divided into an easy to understand 3-phased approach here, and this will lead into our conversation with Monte. So just want to set it up and make sure you understand the landscape of what we're talking about. So we've adopted this 3-phase model because number one, it's easy to understand, it's easy to follow, and there's no deviation from the plan at all. So yes, every environment is unique and we treat it as such with some customizations included in Guardian. But overall, we want to make sure that these 3 areas are covered wholly. So number one, we start with a security assessment and gap analysis. You heard the team mention the gap analysis and security assessment previously. It's very important to understand where you're starting, where your pain points, what's your current operation look like today, who's on your team, what cyber insurance mandates do you have, what does your compliance look like from your government standpoint. And then once we have all of that assessed, then we go into your phase 2 deployments. Now, if you are a Microsoft customer, it's great because Forsyte does all of the professional services work in lighting up your entire Defender stack and Microsoft Sentinel as the seam. So we would leverage all of the solutions that Chris highlighted in the slides previous and turn all those on for you. We'd understand how your operations was maintained. And so we'd configure them on your behalf. And we'd work with you to always maintain your security solutions going forward in a best practice state, because we know it's not a set it and forget it. So we're always working to improve upon, quieting the noise within your tenant of alerts, security policies, and really fine tuning what that looks like for you. And happy to show anybody on the call, if you're interested, what that looks like and how we take those measures on your behalf on another call. So go ahead, Chris.
And I just want to reiterate, Stefanie mentioned the tuning. I think that's something that often gets overlooked. Anyone who's tried to turn on not just the Microsoft security products, but security products at large, they're very chatty, right? One of the things that most customers struggle with is, I turned it on and now I got 1,000 alerts. What does this mean and what I do with it, right? It's not helpful. It really takes some experience to learn to tune that correctly and filter the noise out. And I'll give you one example and then I'll shut up and let Stefanie finish her conversation. But we recently worked with a school that we had onboarded, and 83% of their alerts we were able to filter out. They were informationals, they were automated actions that had already been taking place that didn't need to be displayed in the system. And so we're able to help them craft policies so that those get suppressed, they get automatically closed. We still track them, but it's not being actively worked, and it really frees up your SOC to do more of the good work that they need to be doing.
Great points. That's right. And that all is established in standard operating procedures and should be just as a best practice within your security operations center if you've got that internally. And then the phase 3, which really enters into the long-term Guardian 365 support, is that 24/7 security monitoring and alerting. It's the recurring health calls. How are things going? We've got a series of, or a lot of different people behind the scene who support Monte and his team at Simi Valley. So who are they meeting with every month or every quarter, or what are the goals that they're looking to get to? What's the progress in the ongoing system optimization that we've been able to attack? So, really it's that hand holding, it's that extension of a team, or if you've got it internally, that's great too. Understanding who's in charge of what, so that that things are covered as far as your security is concerned, and continually improving. And then annual pen testing, attack simulation, and phishing training, and then real-time incidents in KPI portal. So how are you looking at your data? How are you monitoring that? How are you assessing your progress through best practice to zero trust configuration, and so on? Forsyte does offer a free security assessment. We haven't always, but we are for the site community. So it's a great assessment. It is the start of our Guardian onboarding, and we do want to extend it to the site community here. It's important that you've got access to the resources. We know budgets are sometimes slim, sometimes they're not. Maybe it's just timing. But really all up, we want to make sure that there are no blockers. So our tagline is, we make security easy, and we really do. We live by that. So this is one way that we have identified that we can increase the visibility on your attack surface and be that free learning tool for you as you work so diligently to prioritize your security. All right. Well, thank you for listening to all of the backstory and the behind the scenes to set the stage for Monte. Monte and his team at Simi Valley have done a fantastic job in prioritizing cybersecurity. Monte understands the nature of the beast and all of the areas that are involved, especially with education. It's a different ball game. So welcome, Monte.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And what we'd like to do here is, and this is really just supposed to be an informal, just a community come together. So if you've got questions in addition to what we're talking to Monte about, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll continue to monitor that. But we'll just have a little bit of a roundtable here and get to know Monte. Monte, feel free to go off of these, go deviate from these questions, just because you've got a lot of information that we'd love for you to share with your colleagues here. So first up, what security challenges has Simi Valley experienced this past year, and how have you pivoted to manage these challenges? It's a big question.
Sure. Yeah, it's a big one. A lot to it, but happy to discuss it. So for this challenge, we've seen an increase in cyber attacks from outside as well as students from within, causing threats to our district. Students don't necessarily have to have the skill set as they used to years ago. All this information is out on the web. They can go down and download a kit. They don't even have to know what they're doing. They are kind of like the pawn these days, but it's very dangerous. And so we've actually seen an uptick, even though we have, so many millions of attacks a year outside, we are drastically seeing an increase from the inside. And it's from students just seeing what they can get away with and what they can push the limits on. And so security threats are time sensitive, and they're critical to resolve them as quickly as possible. And we use Hybrid Joint Active Directory and Entra, as well as Google for Education. We did shift years ago from all of our students using Chromebooks to using Windows laptops, the Surface devices. So with over 20,000 users and devices, we don't have enough time in our day to adequately monitor, investigate, and remediate these threats. And I don't think that's any different from any district that I've talked to in California or even out of California. In education, a lot of times we're given certain types of funds, and those funds have to do with buying equipment, making purchases of equipment and, maybe antivirus or firewall or, Wi-Fi or whatever. But there's not so much the allocation of funds for staffing to support it adequately. And so we have the tools at our fingertips, but we just never have enough time. And to ensure we remain as secure as possible, we began exploring options. And so we started discussions with Forsyte and regarding their Guardian 365 solution and, the fact that their Microsoft verified MXDR solution, was assuring. They have knowledge in this and they're Microsoft backed and vetted out. So it wasn't just another one of 50 vendors that's cold calling us saying, yeah, we can do it. They actually proved to us that they can do it and that Microsoft had vetted them out, and that gives us a little bit of assurance. So with over 20,000 users, it's challenging, and so we knew we had to do something. And so we had those talks with Forsyte on their Guardian 365 solution, and we started evaluating it and doing a little bit of that assessment and get a comfort level of what could they offer us, and not just information like they're sharing today, but actually prove it to us. And they proved it. And so we've had Guardian 365 as our 24/7 365 SOC team for approximately 9 months now. And they handle conducting advanced threat correlations, provide streamlined reporting. We meet with part of their team monthly, as well as quarterly, depending on what we're talking about and how we need to tune things and things we're seeing, or how we want them to respond to threats that we receive. Because it's a bidirectional. It's partnership. It's not just one way. And so they do proactive incident response, and then they do incident alerts. And those alerts are nice because they let us know the impacted users and devices, a detailed timeline of what occurred, action taken by the SOC, and then obviously following the guidelines that were previously arranged, how we want them to respond and what we want them to do on our behalf. And then recommendations if there's anything further that we should do because we didn't give them permission to do it. So there are a few things that we do ourselves. And so they let us know that those things should be done. And we had a very complicated incident last October. And it wasn't from the outside, it was from the inside. It was from a student. And the investigation was very time consuming to correlate several weeks of user activity and what they were doing, files on their computer, things they were doing on their computer, what files they were executing, how they were executing, and where'd they get them from, what websites were they browsing. We really put a whole picture together to approve what was occurring. And all that time was them. It wasn't our staff. I mean, yes, we were involved, and yes, it was a bit time consuming on our part, but we would have never been able to accomplish it in the time frame we did without all of their help. And then the nice thing is, at the end of it, they gave us a 30-page, because it was a big incident. This isn't typical, but it was a 30-page report detailing out exactly what the student had done and how they'd accomplished it. And it didn't only save us time, but we also had a report from an outside independent vendor. So it wasn't just like, oh, district IT got it wrong, or district IT is just trying to paint this kid, this kid's a victim. And, he's not the hacker, he's been hacked. And so, because that's the first thing parents are going to go to is defend their children. And I don't blame them, but we had to truly prove the point of this was not accidental. They weren't the victim. They were the hacker. And if anything else, their peers, the other students and staff, were the victims of this student. So this all was, thankfully we had Guardian 365 in place, and it just proved very valuable. That's one of the bigger incidents, but we get incidents on a daily basis. And Simi Valley has staff and students, like I said, on Windows devices. We do have some Chromebooks, but very few. But even if your ecosystem of students is on Chromebooks, you still have to think of this as a very valuable tool, because your staff still has Windows devices. Your labs are going to be Windows devices. And as previously mentioned by Chris, there's connectors. The Defender for Cloud Apps hooks Defender security right into your Google ecosystem. So that helps out right there all the way across the board.
Thank you. That's great. And Chris, also feel free to jump in at any point.
No, I think Monty hit the nail on the head. I mean, I feel like, granted, I've been in the IT industry for a long time. Microsoft's had a bad rep in the security space for a while, and they didn't play well with others for a long time. But that truly has changed since Satya took over, and we protect Google customers we provide better security for Google environments than Google does. At the end of the day, Google's not the most secure environment out there, and if you're not managing it and putting the right tools in place around it, even if you are using Chromebooks, you're asking for trouble, because the Chromebook, it's not like a traditional device that needs, a full-blown endpoint solution, but they can use that as an entry point to get to other places. And it's not about devices too. You've got to get hey, my phone or my laptop or whatever is what they're after. That's just one way to get in. They compromise the identity, and then once they've got the identity, then they can spread to anything else. They can log into other machines. They can access email. They can exfiltrate data. There's a lot. It's a lot more sophisticated than it used to be. And if we don't adjust how we're reacting to it, you're asking to get compromised.
That's right. This really plays into that, the answers that Monte, you and Chris have provided. Is there anything else that you'd like to note as far as the increasing frequency, complexity of cyber attacks, and your response to that? I think we
No, I
covered it
I
well.
feel like that first question kind of, these kind of
Mhm.
really go hand in hand and cross over on each other. Um, it's just an ever growing thing, it's not going away, especially with AI. And chatbots. They can do so much more in such a shorter amount of time to attack us. And, the bad guys know that education has money for equipment, but not for people to maintain it. And they prey on the fact that, the majority of schools don't have the resources to keep things patched up or to monitor. We had A5 security before we deployed Guardian 365, but we just didn't have, the human factor to respond to that data and to, investigate that data and remediate that data. So that's where, the human factor comes in, where Guardian 365 SOC really gave us the labor force, at the right price, to make sure that we're covered, and we can feel confident that we are doing what we can to try and keep us safe, versus saying, I know we've got the technology, but we don't have the time. And gee, I really want to get to that, but I didn't have time to get to that today. And today turns into a week, a month, a year later, and you have all the intentions of the world to do the best cybersecurity you can for your district, but it just comes down to time, and there's just always something falling off the plate. So that's where Guardian 365 really closed that gap for us.
Well said. Thank you. So talking about resistance, because sometimes, we discussed MFA practices and in K12, we've discussed there are some blockers here and some resistance that we see in the K12 community with regard to security. So what resistance, if any, have you experienced from your end users or maybe leadership, I will just say community, throughout your security journey?
Well, MFA, there was talk for years of how MFA is necessary, and we really have to do something, just typical username and password, especially for the younger kids. We all know that, the teacher will change the password for all 30 kids in their class to baseball or something simple, which makes us a really big target. And again, the bad guys know this. Not only the bad guys, but also other kids, who want to cause mischief. And so there's been a lot of resistance in education to follow what we know in IT as best practice. I spent many years in corporate America before I joined the education side, and the first thing that I noticed was that they know best practice, but they don't follow best practice, and so that makes them a huge target. And it's just as we all know, there's always a balance in security between convenience and compromise. And unfortunately, in security and education, they always lean to the convenient side, and it leaves them wide open. And so, yes, our staff was very resistant. Of course, our students are resistant. I think our staff is more resistant than the students, though, because the students, the staff is like, oh, kids can't do that. Kids, that's going to be too hard for kids. They underestimate the kids. These kids, especially the new generations, the second they're born, they've got a cell phone, playing with that electronic device and learning how to get around YouTube kid videos or whatever. They're programmed, to get around this stuff. And I'd venture to guess that probably fifth and sixth graders probably know half more technology than half our teachers. It's just the way the world is changing. And so there was a lot of resistance. And when it came to MFA, there was definitely a lot of resistance. Our district decided to take the stand, and I really pushed for MFA for all staff and all students all at once. I know that a lot of districts do it different ways. They do some staff and students later and things like that. And I said, look, we got to just jump. If we pull the Band-Aid off slowly, it's just going to hurt more. And so we just jumped MFA, all students, all staff, all at once. And my big argument behind MFA so that it didn't become us versus them kind of argument was cybersecurity insurance. Cybersecurity insurance requires MFA. And a lot of the cyber insurance requirements all get met by the Microsoft stack. And on top of that, also having, the MXDR SOC that Guardian 365 provides. So if you're doing the A5 security and you're doing, like Guardian 365, your cybersecurity insurance, you're going to be able to check all those boxes, and it's going to get rid of your resistance. Because when our Board of Education heard that we can't get cyber insurance unless we do these things, the resistance from our board went away. And once we had the blessing from our board, everybody else has to follow suit. We've got the blessing from our board. So we did have a lot of resistance, but once we prove that the threats are real and cyber insurance has to be in place and it's a requirement of cyber insurance, we got rid of all that resistance. Now, doesn't mean that staff didn't grumble, and we've been on it for a couple of years now. And so they've gotten over their grumbling. They're now used to it. But at the beginning, it was a big grumble about the MFA. But we have had resistance, but you can get through it. But it's easier to blame something like cyber insurance. That way they're not going after a director or an executive person. It's just facts. It's a requirement.
That's a very real thing too, Monty. I mean, we do cybersecurity reviews with our customers that are interested and help them, map out the NIST requirements to the Microsoft tools to make it easier to get insurance. But, boards, that is a requirement, and that's something we see pretty regularly. Although I like to point out, they do it every day. They're all on Facebook and Twitter, and every one of those requires MFA, and they just don't want to do it at work for some reason.
Right.
But we have to protect them. We have to protect your data. Honestly, I mean, MFA is probably the number one thing you can implement today to help protect yourself. There are a lot of different solutions and a lot of different controls that'll help, but the number one thing you can do right now is turn on MFA. It's the easiest thing to do, other than the political pain of dealing with your users. From a technical perspective, it's a fairly straightforward activity and will provide a lot of bang for buck.
Yep. That's right. So speaking of budgets, because we know that budgets are very sensitive in education, we know that some budgets have been decreased in some areas. So for those districts who may have some additional funds to invest, be it from grants or government entities, or maybe they just have some left over, or maybe they're planning for their next fiscal. What's your recommendation for the best return on investment? We've got another question here regarding Google Workspace and Google environments and the best way to proactively secure those. So maybe we can just merge the two together, and you can talk from both standpoints.
Well, everybody's got their own approach of, how they want to handle cybersecurity. And I can't necessarily say one way is right or wrong. I mean, in IT, there's a lot of different solutions, and it doesn't mean that one's better or worse than the other. It's a personal choice, a personal preference. When I worked for a corporation as a director, or when I worked as a consultant in IT, working for companies, in education and banking and such, there's a lot of different thoughts and a lot of different ideas out there. And like Chris was saying before, Microsoft has gotten a bad rap from their history, but it's not where they're at today. And I've been in IT for over 30 years. I too, many years ago would say I would never choose Microsoft antivirus to protect my computer. It was not thought of as a serious professional option. But that's not the case today. Before we went from A3 to A5 security licensing with Microsoft, we did have our funds allocated across multiple different solutions, one of them being CrowdStrike, which is a great XDR solution. But when you start looking at education, you start thinking about, okay, I have a set amount of money that I can spend. It's not like a corporation where if you raise your prices, you now have more income and your budget can be increased. I mean, we're set on a fixed income based on how many students we have in our district and how much the state's going to pay us per student, basically. And so we're kind of in a constraint. And so we have to make our money go the furthest we can, and then with limited staffing and time in a day. So as Microsoft Stack became more resilient, more, you look at all these different quadrant reviews, and they're moving up in those charts. And, you want to see a single pane of glass, and you want to look at if you're managing your devices through something like Intune, and we are, and you want to look at your antivirus, your XDR, and you want to look at all the applications on your devices and control those applications and control your URLs outside of your firewall and your content filter, but you want to block applications. There's just so many things that's in the Microsoft stack. And so for us, the way we invested our funds is I started shifting over, and instead of, kind of put in the gamble on Microsoft and saying, you know what, I'm going to put most of my eggs in one basket. I'm not going to have all these individual solutions anymore, because you have to manage those individual solutions. You have to learn how to manage those individual solutions. When you had an incident, you had to look at 4 or 5 different solutions to figure out and tie all the pieces together of how did they get in, what did they do, what is their behavior. And I got to say, especially the proof's in the pudding after that October where we dug that deep. That was the first time we dug that deep. I mean, we really dug deep, and it performed. It could give us the answers. We knew exactly what they executed, how they executed, where they got it to execute it. And we could paint the whole picture of the activity on that device, and prove or disprove that it was malicious, or they were compromised. And and there's a lot simpler threats that we find on a daily basis that they're all brought to our attention by a single pane of glass. And so for cybersecurity and investing your funds, I know some people are nervous about that phrase of putting all your eggs in one basket, but Microsoft really has made that basket a safe basket for the eggs, and it's a total solution. When you get in there, it's I know Microsoft still has several different portals, but they're bringing all those portals together. So every day we're seeing those portals come more and more together as not only like a single pane of glass, but a single portal, which is making it easier and easier to do our job on a daily basis. So my suggestion would be, don't be nervous about, putting your eggs in one basket and going to A5 Security and maybe freeing up your funds from, your ESET or your Norton or your CrowdStrike or whatever you're using, because the benefits of having everything in one pane of glass for us has outweighed the concerns.
Thank you. So speaking of your plans, and how you're going into the future, looking at your cybersecurity preparedness and any adjustments that you're going to make, can you share those future plans with us today? Just a few, if you've got some highlights.
I wouldn't say we have a specific game plan, because cybersecurity is constantly changing. So that's where the monthly and the quarterly meetings come in with Guardian 365, because we can leverage the fact that Guardian 365 staff are meeting with not only Microsoft to keep up with what's changing, what's coming, but they're working with a lot of different clients. And so they're seeing a bigger pane of glass than we are in our little ecosystem. And so we evaluate what's going on in the industry and where we need to adjust. And then we make those adjustments. And we discuss, together as a team of what are the new features that Microsoft came out with in the security stack, and how can we implement them? Because everything's a moving target and everything's just going to keep evolving. But as the threats evolve, we've seen the Microsoft security stack evolve to keep up with it. So, one example is we block application installation for students. But now you have software vendors, developers that are writing their software so that it breaks the mold of where you're supposed to install in Windows. And so that negates that security of you can't install software. So now they're installing software. So one thing that we can do in the Microsoft security stack is we're now blocking applications based on the certificate that installer signed by. Because otherwise, if we do by name, they're just going to rename the executable. But we actually pull the certificate out of the application, and we can deploy through the Microsoft security stack, and we're blocking by certificate. So that's just one example of just adjusting to new threats and new changes as how the threats come through. And Microsoft is continuing to give us the tools to be able to accomplish that. So it's an ongoing living plan, really.
Fantastic. Great. So at this point, Becca, do we have any questions from the group?
We do
at
not.
large that we could. Okay. All right. Well, if you do, please don't be shy. Put them in the chat, or we can certainly, I'm sure, take you off mute if that is easier. I think the overall goal here, and Monte, you've hit it right square on the head, is progression. So it's never good enough to stay where we currently are, especially in cybersecurity. So if we're not moving forward, we're absolutely moving backwards. And so looking at your security assessments, looking at the options that are available to you, I can say from Forsyte, we do provide a myriad of free services, such as the security assessment. And again, Monte, you referenced documentation. I think this documentation it's a lot of documentation in this security assessment. The last one I saw was a good 80 pages. But again, it's a moment in time. So it's not meant to stand for where you are even 2 weeks from now, a month from now, a quarter from now. It's a moment in time to judge and to help you really clarify where you want to put your focus. Free Microsoft security workshops. Not sure if anybody has gone through those, but they're certainly helpful in understanding the power that you have with A5 and Sentinel. Secure score analysis. It's one of the ways that Microsoft can help you understand your configuration of your Microsoft technology and the score that has been given there. Cyber insurance reviews. We're happy to look at your cyber insurance policies if anybody has a question here within the site community. Again, we want this to be a partnership. It's very important to us to offer these free services. And then we go into more of the paid side of the services, which do revolve around pen testing, vulnerability assessments, technology deployments, everything in the Microsoft stack we can help you with, and there's a way and a method behind deploying and configuring these technologies to work for you. I think we can all agree with that. And it's not always easy, but it's certainly nice when you have a partner by your side who understands the complexities and the options. And then, of course, 24/7, whatever that looks like, just making sure that you do have somebody behind a keyboard and pane of glass to be monitoring your environment. And that's all of your identities. That's your entire landscape. 24/7. So we're talking nights, weekends, holidays, vacations, making sure that it's not, your team's checking out on Friday and checking back in on Monday. And there's a lot of alerts to get through that Monday morning. So we really do see it all. And for us, we just want to make sure that we're removing those obstacles for you. So if you have any questions, please feel free. You've got a lot of our information in the chat. Reach out to us. Monte, I'm sure that you'd be happy to take questions outside of this and help your colleagues in the site community from there. And then wanted to point out, we've got the webinar that will be hosted by Microsoft. We're joining Microsoft to dig into Sentinel, and Fadi will lead that effort with his team. And that's going to be on Wednesday, February the 19th. It's 11 to 12 Pacific time. We'll be sending out a link to register and join us for that. And here are some additional resources. CFITS. So Christina does maintain a fantastic page within the site website. It's all about the CFITS partnership. You can get resources there. You can connect with Christina. You can request certain, if you've got something on your mind, just send her a request and she'll be happy to get that to us as well. I just want to say thank you so much, Monte. It helps so much for us and for everybody here who's really very concerned about cybersecurity to dig in and see what's worked and to see how you've gone about it. It is fantastic because it can be very overwhelming. So appreciate your time and really that you've given to us in the community.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been a great partnership, and it's given us a peace of mind, and the cost is right, Yeah. If you're looking at staffing,
yes,
you're never going to pay for staffing to get 24/7, 365. You need a partnership, and so far we've had a great partnership with Guardian 365. So I encourage you to take a look at them.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, Christina, you want to wrap us up?
Sure thing. Before I do, Becca, is there anything that you wanted to add prior to?
Yes, just we will be following up here at Forsyte with the recording as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to respond to that email and we can set you up with a specialist to discuss this more. So thank you, everyone. Chris, Monte, Stefanie, Christina, Fadi. This was really great.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Becca. And thank you, everyone, for being a part of this collaboration. Much appreciated, Monte, on behalf of the site and the site community. Thank you, Chris, Stefanie, Fadi, and Becca. Again, you'll be able to find the recording on the site website within the week. Any programmatic questions that you may have in the community, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.